Hello everybody, welcome back to SkySaga Make It Real. So this is the second episode of this, and I put a little post on the forums and asked you guys what you wanted to see next, and you have decided on a weapon, and in this case we are doing the basic jungle sword. So I have a whole bunch of kind of images of this guy, but I've realized this is a pretty flat, easy shape to make. So what we're actually going to do is we are going to go through, or I am going to go through, and I'm going to outline this entire structure and then this entire shape. And then once I have that done, I'm going to import the lines that I create around the edge of this thing into my 3D modeling software, and I should be able to push them out to full 3D shapes. Now, it is going to be a little bit blocky, and stuff like these corner details aren't going to be there, and the lines separating these like three sections that are here aren't going to be there. But that is not a problem. I can get all of that stuff sorted, but getting this main shape is going to be the real issue. So this is as close to having a flat image of this blade as I can possibly get. There is a little bit of kind of aliasing errors around here, which means that this handguard that I print up might be just a little bit out of proportions, but I really don't mind too much. That's going to be okay. Also, the handle up the top here, the pommel of this weapon, is a little bit interesting. Modeling and shaping this could be most of the time spent modeling in today's episode, but that's okay. That is one of the cool little features of this guy, so we definitely need to have at least a good crack at making sure that that works. So for now, I'm going to get to work. I'm going to pull out a line tool, and I'm going to start creating lines down through this thing, and hopefully, and not too very long at all, we'll be over in the modeling software and actually doing all of that up. Now, I'm going to kind of skip the curves, because I can actually, in this software that I'm using right now, go back and apply curves to a line segment. So for now, I'm just going to kind of block all of my line segments in. In actual fact, I'm also even going to go straight out where this guy curves down, because in the final version, this, of course, will be a straight line. Perfect. Okay, so I'm not going to force you guys to sit here and watch me do all of this. This is going to be a long-ish process, so I'm going to just get this all done, and I'll see you over in the modeling software. So here we are. This is our sword template. Now, it didn't actually come out quite as well as I'd hoped it would, but that is something that we can fix. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to extrude this whole shape here up and out, and we're only going to extrude it out a little bit. We're going to extrude it out 10 mil, which is 1 centimeter. If I can get the 10 mil to stick, just about there. Oh well, we'll just type that in anyway. So we're going to do 10 mil, and that is now a 10 mil section of blade, and that's probably going to be okay for the actual blade itself, but I am going to try and work out the proportions of this in just half a second here. So first, I'm going to take my newly extruded shape, I'm going to push it out over this way. This is actually pretty huge. I really should scale everything down just a little bit to make it more manageable, but for now, we're just going to leave that like that. Now, the reason I've done this is, as you can see, I've got this nice little cut out section out of the blade, and I really want to have an extruded face of this little guy in here, and that is going to be another little piece. So that's going to be, I think this one's going to be just 9 or 8 millimeters, and I really wanted those as two separate entities, because that way I can do this, and when I jam them together, you see when that hits 300 millimeters, somewhere around here, go up by 1. That's not doing what I want it to do, but when that's at 300 millimeters, you can see that I get the nice like little indent divot in the blade, which is perfect, and I can do the same on the other side, which is exactly what I wanted to do. Now, the next thing I think I'm going to try and work out is how thick this blade actually needs to be, and how long I want to print this too, because this is actually pretty huge right now. If I measure the blade is from tip to point up in the back here. That is 46 centimeters. Yeah, that's pretty huge. We don't need quite that much, and I can really only print about 30 centimeters length at a time. So I'm going to scale this down a little bit, just so that I can print the blade in one go, and then we'll go from there. And there we go with a few pixel measurements in hand. I have got some of this blade starting to work now and starting to look alright. So I kind of cut out the middle section and replaced it with an actual square brick, because as you can see, my little drawing over here, I didn't get this perfectly square, and it really probably should be. So I've squared it up with a square block, and like I said, I did a couple of pixel measurements to make sure that that guy is about the right shape. Now what we're going to do is we're going to chamfer the corners to make that look the way it's supposed to. So these corners were always going to be kind of rounded off, I guess. So we're going to add that rounding in now, or like flattening it to kind of like this. I think it's around about that type of level there. Hang on, I'm just going to double check my extra little guides over on the side here. Need to have a look at it from about that angle. Actually, those probably aren't quite enough. I'm trying to like get the right angle, and this being a 3D space and I'm trying to get a 2D angle makes life a little bit difficult. Yeah, no, they're supposed to be a little bit bigger than that. So what we actually can do is we're just going to quickly undo that and redo all of that stuff. So this quick little chamfer, and add that chamfer back into these corners. And like I said, we should be about there, I think, just above the blade and just below the blade. Yeah, that one. Okay, so now we've got the blade and the hand grip done, or the hand guard done. I need to obviously do the handle, because the handle is still just the very thin extrusion, and I've also got to work out this guy at the back here, get that to look alright, because that is going to be something of a challenge. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the back of this guy off just along that kind of flat there. Just do a nice little cut. Once I have that cut, I will work some way out, I guess, of extruding this thing and getting it to look okay. And then once we've done that, actually I probably won't extrude that first. I think I will extrude the handle first, get the handle out to the right thickness, see what I can do about cutting the hand grips into place. And then once I've done those two things, it's actually going to be time to make a few holes in these things so that this thing will slot together, because I'll print this in 3 parts. I'll print it in blade, hand guard, and hand grip. Or maybe I'll cut the hand grip into 2 as well, and we'll have 4 parts. I don't know, we'll see how we go when I start doing the cutting. And now we are looking really, really good. We actually have the handle done and dusted, which is perfection. Check it out. So I think I've cut the handle in too many places. It was supposed to only have 3 wraps, but it's ended up with 6. So I accidentally doubled my calculation somewhere along the way. How I've done that is I've basically created this little like helix type structure and just like subtracted that away from here in just the few small places that it crossed over, and that actually worked out really, really well. I'm quite happy with how that's gone. So now what we're going to do is we're going to tackle this little guy, and in fact we're almost going to tackle this together. So I've cut this into sections right now, and we're going to extrude the base plate out to start with, and then we're going to extrude this top section out. So what I really want to do is I'm actually going to extrude both the top and the bottom at the same time, and then I'm going to extrude this kind of top section a little bit further, because it's supposed to be out a little bit further. Now these things both kind of, whoop, that was interesting. It suddenly told me I couldn't pull it out any further, which doesn't make any sense, because I should be able to keep going. Interesting. Anyways, it looks like 20 mil is all we're going to get out of that, which means that this thing is 60 mil in total. Now that does not look like quite the right shape for this little thing, but it's getting there. So the actual base is probably okay, and I want to see if I can pull this extra top piece out just a little bit further. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to let me do that or not, but there is one way to find out. So just out a little. Yeah, there we go. That should be all we need. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a little line, and the line is not going to be on these things, but actually down on here, because this is where we're going to pull the shape from. So hopefully I can kind of zoom in there a little bit. And where's my sketch lines? So I want to create a polyline. I think this polyline will let me go back in and edit. Actually, no, we're not going to do a polyline. Let's get out of that mode. We'll do a spline instead. So a spline should definitely let me edit things. Now, I'm going to kind of cut these guys down. So the idea is we kind of, this is going to be a little bit more difficult with these things actually in the way. But if we kind of go, it's like somewhere there. And we want to go out and around the edge to about here. And then we'll go out and over to there. And then we're going to go back to kind of here. And then we're going to go back to there. Now, I want to grab a hold of these points if I can. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to grab a hold of these points. We're going to manipulate these points until I get a shape that I'm after. And hopefully I can like drop the anchors a little bit and pinch them in, because what I want to try and do is, yeah, pinch in a little bit like that. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Oops, that was moving that. Don't want to do it that way. I'm going to grab this point and do the same kind of little like pinch in, a little bit of a rounder on that bit, and the shape is actually coming out to be a little bit weird. That is actually probably not too much of an issue. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to hopefully split that with this line. Now what that's going to do is it's going to create this nice little shape, and it's going to create that shape through that body. And if we hit enter now, that's going to have cut some of this stuff out of it for us. So there you go, look at that. Now it's got a an interesting shape to it, which is not quite the shape that I had intended. So we might undo that and actually move this guy over a little bit, because it's not quite centered where it's supposed to be. Oops. Come here. Alright, move you over about there. Try that again. We'll do that little split. Just bam, and hopefully splitting entity. There we go. Bam. That is a lot nicer. Let's do that one instead. Beautiful. Okay, so now we've got the handle shaped up a little bit like that. I'm actually going to round this back pommel, or the back section of this pommel as well. Just give that a quick little round. I'm not sure how round I'm going to be able to get this. Pretty round. Nice. Okay, so there you go. Now this little pommel is not too bad. What I want to see if I can do is kind of quickly expand that, and then we're going to cut this outer point here in with the same shape. Actually, we probably could just do that straight up as is. That'll probably work. So let's do that right now. I'm going to quickly cut this big section of the pommel with the same, whoops, not that guy, this guy, splitting entity. Bam. So now, if we delete all of that, there we go, check it out, this pommel is actually starting to kind of sort of take shape. Nice. Okay, so now we need to take this little guy and do some magic with that. So I have skipped a few steps because this video is getting a little bit long, but here we go. We have one sword done and dusted, including nice little things like the end goes to a point now. Well, kind of a point. I didn't want to make it too sharp because I actually still do need to print this thing. And I made the handle and the pommel at the end. You guys saw a little bit of that, and then I just kind of extruded this and made some cuts in it and stuff, and actually it turned out not too bad. It does look kind of sort of like the leaf that is happening in the actual handle of the print. So now this is actually in 4 pieces already, although this piece here I need to join back together a little bit. So we're going to throw that at the printer and see what the printer does with that. Let's take a look. And there we have it. This thing is now fully printed, and it is one very, very long sword. I actually forgot to scale it down, so that means that the whole thing is a lot longer than it was supposed to be. The blade section itself measures about 40 centimeters, so I'd wager the whole thing around about a meter, probably just a little bit under, which means it's actually around about half size. Now I'm having to hold it exactly this way because it's not glued together yet. Some of the pieces, as you can see here, this is the blade, and that is just kind of held in there with friction at the moment, and I made my hole at the end of this guy just a little bit too big. So whenever you print something and want to stick it together, you always make them just a little bit larger. You make the hole just a little bit larger than the thing that sits into it. In this case, I've done it a little bit too well, and it means that this thing comes out. So I am actually going to glue the stuff together at some point, but basically the top of the blade, which printed up on the build plate, is fine. This thing looks really, really good, as you can see. It needs a little bit of sanding down the end here where there are kind of some layer ridging, but the bottom side is not quite so good. So there's some tape left over from the build plate, and there's also some tape left over up here. There's more layer ridging and a little bit of support material still stuck under the bottom. So sorry you didn't get to see the full thing of this being printed. I tried out a new time-lapse technique so that I could be a little bit more hands-off with my time-lapse, and I actually had two cameras running at the same time, one for this piece and one for the pommel over there, and they both ran out of juice at around the hour-and-a-half mark, I think. So you kind of saw an hour and a half of this and that, and as you can tell, this guy was only like 2 or 3 layers deep when the hour-and-a-half time limit ran out, whereas the pommel was printed a fair amount more. So this guy here actually took around about 9 hours, 7 hours, something along those lines, to print up. It's 10% infill, so it's actually quite light, but it is still going to do the job. But like I said, it's not glued in yet, and that's because I'm going to do this kind of sanding along the front blade tip here, so it kind of points in at the front there. So I need to sand on this face and on the other side. Just smooth that stuff out, remove these extra little pieces of tape and whatever else is going on. And then I might even actually paint this before I glue it together, so I might have to do a follow-up video, even if beta hits before I actually finish this thing, and show you guys the finished piece, because that is really, like, I'm just really, really happy with this. Check it out. So this is the handle. I didn't have any brown plastic, so I printed this bit in black. That's come out really well. It's a little bit glossy for the camera to pick up. And there's the handle. Handle came out well as well. And if I'm not careful with this, these things are going to fall apart. Then finally the pommel, and I'm really happy with the pommel. The pommel just looks really great, and this little like leaf shape has printed in here just beautifully. It's really, really done a nice job. So there you go. That is this print done. This is a, like I said, about a half-size prop from SkySaga, because the really weird thing that I've found when I'm doing all of these pixel measurements for this stuff is that most of the tools and weapons in this game are in excess of 2 meters long. All of the like short swords and one-handed items are around about a meter and, I don't know, 8? So like 1.8 meters, so about the same height as the character. And then stuff like the two-handed weapons are just huge. Those things are massive. So like I said, I printed this at about half scale, and like honestly, as a handle, that is perfect for me as an actual adult human. So these weapons that we're playing with in SkySaga are just literally huge. And I mean, I'm going to see if I can put this blade in. I have a feeling it's going to fall out again as I move the blade around. But, yeah, it's not even going to sit in there for half a second for me to have a go at this. But it does feel very, very... Oh, and there we go. Now it's broken. So, like I said, I'm going to do some finishing on this, and I am going to glue it all together, and I'll do a follow-up video sometime in the future to show off all of that stuff. So, hope you guys have enjoyed that one, and I will see you next week for some more Make It Real.